An illegal detention. That's how the Chinese embassy is describing the arrest of Huawei Chief Check Meng Wanzhou. Well, Miss Meng was arrested at a Canadian airport at the request of the United States over alleged sanctions violations related to Iran. Manila Chan brings us the details. Hi, Manila.
Hi there, Natasha. So Meng Wanzhou was arrested on a layover in Vancouver, Canada, and now possibly awaiting extradition to the United States over unspecified charges at the behest of the U.S. government. Now, many believe her detention is due to allegations of conducting business with Iran, which is currently under sanctions from the United States, and as a symbol of a bigger trade war between the U.S. and China. So far, the Chinese embassy in Ottawa have limited details over her arrest, but have issued a statement that reads in part, quote, "At the request of the U.S. side, the Canadian side arrested a Chinese citizen not violating any American or Canadian law. The Chinese side firmly opposes and strongly protests over such kind of actions which seriously harmed the human rights of the victim." But Ms. Meng isn't just a random Chinese citizen. Meng is the CFO and daughter of Huawei founder Ren Zhengfei. Huawei is one of China's tech giants with revenues hovering in the $50 billion range, employing over 180,000 people. Now, the company is on track to overtake Apple in the Chinese smartphone sector. The Chinese smartphones cost about 20% less than the American counterpart. But the U.S. views Huawei as possible fronts for spying, as well as being a commercial competitor to the American tech industry. Now, this comes at odd times as Washington and Beijing have agreed to something of a ceasefire from that tariff spat that arose this summer. Now, the background that led to that tariff tension came from China's tech laws, which the U.S. allow for them to steal American technology without consequence. Now, although the Chinese are unhappy about Ms. Meng's detention, Beijing wants to avoid disrupting the progress being made now to end that trade war. Natasha?
All right. Thank you so much, Manila. And with the future of Huawei technologies in question, we're joined by a live panel to discuss. Former UK Member of Parliament George Galloway and political commentator Steve Malzberg. Thanks for joining us today, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So, Steve, what do you make of this arrest, especially now that Ms. Meng is being sought for extradition to the U.S.?
Well, I think this is a bold move by the Justice Department and the United States government. You know, under the Obama administration, indictments were issued, but they never went this far, fearing the obvious retaliation from the Chinese government, who might nab U.S. citizens, or other governments that might do the same once this genie is out of the bottle, so to speak. But, you know, this is not just something new. This goes beyond just violating sanctions against Iran. Back in 2012, the United States Congress issued a report about Huawei and the threat that they pose. They've been pulled, all their smartphones have been pulled from military bases and installations. You can't buy them there anymore because of the security threat. And the U.S. has been pressuring governments all over the world to cut off their ties with Chinese cell phone manufacturers and smartphone manufacturers like Huawei and others. Also, of course, ZTE, which we almost put out of business, but we backed off on. So I think this is a bold step. And it shows the U.S. isn't going to take this kind of Chinese interference in our intelligence anymore.
And George, now Beijing is urging the U.S. and Canada to clarify the reason for the CFO's arrest. Does this reaction translate to you that China is going to fight this?
Well, this may be lost in translation, but what Steve calls bold, most people in the world will call bonkers, or in other words, insane. This is one of the most powerful people in China's daughter. It is the second biggest telecommunications company in the entire world, and she's the SFO. And she's been nicked at an airport in Canada at US behest, apparently for selling goods to another country altogether, Iran. It is extraterritoriality gone absolutely insane. Now, in the 19th century, if this had happened to a British citizen, the government sitting behind me would have dispatched a fleet of gunboats to pound the miscreant power into submission, often China, by the way. And we did that many times. The idea that China is going to accept this piracy, because that's what it is. It's an act of piracy that has been committed against China, which will soon be, if it isn't already, the most important country in the world. This is a kind of death wish on the part of the United States.
Well, Steve, we know it back in April, the U.S. prosecutors were already looking to see if Huawei violated any, U.S. sanctions against Iran. And now there's a concern that these Chinese phones could pose a national security threat, as you mentioned. So how do you see things moving forward, Steve?
Well, it's not only the United States that has taken a hard stand. New Zealand just kicked Huawei out of the 5G market there. Australia kicked them out also earlier in the year from the 5G market because the world realizes that this is a threat. This is a spying mechanism, and that's what China does. And there has to be a red line drawn. There has to be a red line drawn, or China will just keep doing it. And it takes this president, Donald Trump, who has confronted China. He confronted him during the campaign, and it wasn't just rhetoric. We're seeing that he really feels he needs to go down as the president that is going to stop China from stealing our intellectual property and from posing a security threat. Here, at the behest of the Chinese president, Donald Trump saved ZTE because we forbade them from purchasing U.S. parts, and that would have put them out of business. The Chinese president said, please loosen that up. We did. But there has to be a line drawn somewhere, and the president has drawn that line, and I think most Americans would be behind this.
And George, even though progress has recently been made with the trade war against the U.S. and China, do you think this arrest will have any impact on business moving forward?
Absolutely. I mean, you can draw a line, you can draw a wall, you can draw a fence around your entire country, if you like. That's entirely your business. What you don't have the right to do is tell other people who they can trade with. You can ban every Huawei phone in the United States. That's entirely your prerogative. But you don't have the right to tell me I can't buy one. I have nothing to do with you. You don't own me. I didn't elect you. And you cannot impose your laws on me. Neither can you do so on any other sovereign country. This is an act of war that the United States has carried out in Canada today. And to think China will take it lying down is absolute self-delusion.
Quickly, Steve, is this an act of war?
Well, if it was an act of war, Canada just participated in it. Why would Canada participate in it? And we'll see what the legal system holds. I mean, if we're legally able to do this, and apparently we are, and China hasn't called it an act of war, we'll see where it leads.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. George Galloway and Steve Malzberg, thank you so much.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.